Pleased to be back on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show here on Facebook Live with Jimmy Sullivan. We're pleased to be joined by Tom Canavan of the Associated Press. He's been at the AP since 1984, and we are really pleased to be joined by him. And Tom, I want to start, there's certainly a lot of issues around football, and as our society faces social issues that are weaved into sports and especially football, and of course, the coronavirus pandemic, these are things we want to get to. But I want to begin with kind of the news of the day or the last 24 hours or so, which is the Jets' Jamal Adams, who requests a trade to move from the Jets. And he lists a number of competitive teams in the sport. The Jets control him for 2 more seasons. I'm curious your take on how likely it is they move him and at what cost in your mind.
I always believe that when players demand trades, especially young ones, it's a bargaining tool. He wants his money. He wants it now. The contract is a contract, and I think a lot of players refuse to accept that. And I mean, if I'm the Jets, I'm not giving him away. I mean, you can demand a trade all you want, but I'm keeping you unless somebody gives me something spectacular. And I'm thinking, first and a second, a first and a third, a first and a really good player. But the bottom line is I'm not giving you away.
Tom, it seems interesting because as you follow what Jamal Adams has said, do you think this has to do more with the fact that he wants to be, say, the highest paid safety in the league? Or do you think his demand for a trade has more to do with the fact that he just doesn't want to be a Jet anymore and he wants to go somewhere where he can win?
I think it's all about money. I mean, that's it. I mean, he's good. He's very good. I mean, he realizes it, and he's not willing to wait. So, like I said, though, the Jets hold the cards. And, I mean, he can complain all he wants, but, I mean, he's stuck.
Is this related to the 5-year rookie contract? Is this something that the game needs to change potentially in order to acquiesce to players that there are players from his rookie class like Christian McCaffrey who have cashed in, and perhaps that's what Jamal Adams is trying to demand, that he should get paid at this point as a tremendous young player?
I think there are 2 answers to it. If you're an owner, you say it's a great system.
Yeah.
You're a player, you say, I'd like it reduced to 4 years or 3 years, and I'd like to see the franchise tag taken out. And I mean, bottom line is, I think he might even be under their control for 6 years, a 6-year total, because you have 4 years of the contract, you have the 5th-year option, and then they could always franchise him in the 6th year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure, that's going to be a give and take item in the next CBA. But again, there are 2 answers, and there's a player's answer and an owner's answer.
Tom, let's move over to the Giants now. They only won 4 games last year. They've got a new head coach in Joe Judge. What do you make with the current situation, with the coronavirus, the inability for the team to get together? How do you think that's going to impact Joe Judge in his first year as Giants coach?
Well, it doesn't help, obviously. You as a new coach, you want to be with your players as much as you can. You want to install your system quickly, and you want them on the field, and you want to see what you have. And what this has done is, they've had to learn remotely, which is in some ways not as tough as people think, because most of these kids in college took remote courses, so they're used to it. So I think they've been able to handle that part. But, it's a difference learning sitting in a class, but a coach needs to evaluate. And you're not going to evaluate, looking at a Zoom conference call, which in my days would have been called Hollywood Squares. And, so, I mean, you need guys on the field.
I'm curious, Tom, you wrote a column on the Giants and Joe Judge specifically, and his approach to some of the social issues that have sort of upheaved America right now. And this is certainly something that NFL teams are talking about. Many are observing Juneteenth. I'm curious how a rookie head coach approaches this. And the kneeling question is maybe a second question where he has avoided comment on that. How do you anticipate the national anthem going in the NFL, or specifically with the Giants locker room this season?
Well, it probably won't go as Donald Trump would like. I would think that the players as a group will decide to, kneel out of respect for Black lives. I think that whether it happens for 1, 2, or the whole season, remains to be seen. I think Judge is very smart in saying, I'm not going to make this decision for the team. I think it's a team decision, and I'm sure that it's not going to be 100%. Just as a couple of years ago, when the initial Colin Kaepernick reaction was, I think it was Landon Collins, and who else was it? Olivier Vernon, and who's the defensive lineman who used to play for the Jets? I'm losing my mind now. But the three of them were the ones who knelt, and, they got pointed out. And I think there will be some players on the Giants who believe, the national anthem stands for something, and they will stand. And I think in some ways, it reflects society because, if you look at politics now, there's no middle ground anymore. It seems you're either far right or far left. And, nobody's willing to meet in the middle. And you can see it in baseball negotiations. And, it's what it is. And I think you have to respect everybody's opinion.
Tom, it's interesting when you talk about Joe Judge because he hasn't been the coach, obviously, for very long, but he seems to be very deft at dealing with players, dealing with the media. Has that been your takeaway as well? Because he seems to be, a really smart guy. He was really impressive in his first press conference. How do you think the qualities that he has shown, at least in public, are going to play out on the field?
Well, I think one of the things he benefits from, Pat Hanlon might be one of the top PR guys in all of sports. And I'm sure that Pat has been in his ear talking about these things. He also mentored under Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. I mean, Saban, I think, is probably a little bit more savvy. Belichick he can be a real pain in the neck. I'd say something else, but we're zooming away. But, so I think he's had the benefit of a lot of experience. So, I mean, he's handled it well, and I hope he continues that way.
Tom, Joe Judge and Jason Garrett and a new Giants coaching staff. Daniel Jones entering his second year. What kind of strides does this franchise need to take from a 4-win mark? What are the goalposts for this season?
Well, I think what everybody's looking to Daniel Jones, but I think the real issue is, can the defense keep them in games? And I mean, everybody last year said, well, the offense will run up a ton of points, and that didn't happen. And the problem was the defense wasn't good enough. I mean, they've made some additions. They've improved the linebackers. They still need a pass rush. The secondary was young. And so, I mean, unless the defense can play better, no matter what they do on offense, isn't going to be good enough.
You think they were sufficient with their offensive line upgrade? Sorry, Jimmy. On the offensive line, do you feel that they did enough with the offensive line?
Well, that's a question mark. I mean, there's too many iffy situations. I mean, Nate Solder had a really bad year. He's a better player than that. John Halapio, who started at center, had an Achilles injury late in the year. Is he going to be ready? The right side tackle is a question mark. I mean, even though you drafted a number 1 draft pick in Andrew Young, and I mean, it just seems, it's question marks. So, I mean, potentially they've got enough guys, but I am not sure how it's going to pan out because they haven't had a chance to get on the field.
And you brought that up, not being able to get a chance to be on the field. And we've seen doctors saying, look, if the NFL doesn't have a bubble, it's going to be hard to play in 2020. Obviously, a lot of this is speculation right now, and we still have a lot of time. But where is your head at right now when you think about the possibility of an NFL season in a sport where players just can't social distance and there's a ton of contact?
Yeah, I worry about, like Dr. Fauci, how long can this league run? And I think I said Andrew Young before, and I meant Andrew Thomas, whatever. I'm losing, I'm getting there. But yeah, I mean, it's concerned because you're going to have to test players all the time. You are going to have to, and if you've got a squad of more than 60 to 70 people, I mean, are they going to have enough tests available? And you're talking about, 30 teams, you're talking about, or 31 teams, is all the supplies necessary? I mean, what happens when these guys go home and they're with their families? I mean, some kid goes to school, and let's say they're back in school and the kid brings home something. I mean, it's a really iffy situation. I mean, I don't think coronavirus is going to be a thing in the past until we have a vaccine. And, I think with mumps or measles, it took 4 years, and that was the quickest one. So, I mean, I know the whole world is looking for an answer, but I don't know if it's going to happen that quickly.
Certainly, the public health crisis has the potential to sort of end all plans for a potential season. But then I'm curious about the potential of the owners and the players having problems getting together, like we're seeing in baseball. And there's no indications of that yet, but it's still only June. Would you anticipate there being a disconnect between the Players Association and the league as well in the NFL?
There's just something in my gut that says, especially if they don't have a season this year, that it'll be easier to get together on a new CBA because, I don't know how much these guys are going to get paid, especially if the owners aren't making money. But baseball is the strange sport because it's the union has the best contract, I think, of any sport. And the problem now is they all want the contract enforced. And can you enforce the contract when the money's not coming in? And I mean, I'm sure there's some judge will say that, but what happens if teams start filing for bankruptcy?
Tom, I wanted to ask you on a personal level because you work for the Associated Press and you're in press boxes all the time. And, as we all know, press boxes can get pretty busy. If we come around to September and there is an NFL season, on a personal level for you, how comfortable would you be in a press box where there could be potentially a good amount of people?
Well, I think that'll be something that'll depend on the state of the coronavirus. I mean, if we go to phase 3 and suddenly we have a ton of cases developing and people contracting, I mean, I think what sports will do is what the people at the NYRA have done with the Belmont this year. They've limited the amount of media to, I think every organization that wants to cover can have a max of 1. And I mean, the AP's got 1 writer and 1 photographer because our photo guys cover a lot of different organizations. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the virus expanded again or rebounded that, we have a smaller press crew. And I mean, I don't even know if we'll be getting in locker rooms. I mean, maybe after games, we'll be doing a Zoom with players brought to a podium.
Tom, if you had to picture what an NFL season looks like, it's merely speculation at this point, but what would be your guess at this point?
I would think they're going to play without fans. I think if you really wanted the season to go through, you'd put the players in isolation for 4 months, 5 months. and this is if you wanted to make sure it went off. I mean, because TV money is there, and if you want the money and you want everybody to be paid, that's the way to do it. If you allow people to go home and get exposed or go out at night or whatever, you could go into a game and suddenly Daniel Jones sat at the wrong table for dinner and it wasn't cleaned properly, and the Giants are using Colt McCoy as the starter. So, and that would be for 2 weeks because most isolations are 14 days.
Right. Certainly a lot to see, and certainly still a lot more to unfold. We thank you, Tom Canavan, for helping us sort this out and joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
No problem. And you don't even want the winner of the Belmont?
Give us the winner of the Belmont.
I was going to say it's 'tis the law because there's only one good horse in the race.
We thank you very much, Tom Canavan of the Associated Press. Thanks so much.
No problem. Take care.
You too.